Hey mamas, welcome back to another Mamas Partnering with God podcast. Again, I'm super excited about today's topic where we're talking about priorities, which I know most people wouldn't think of as an exciting topic, but once we get into it, you'll totally understand why I love talking about priorities. Priorities can be such a touchy subject for some people because, you think of a priority more as a goal rather than an actual priority. For instance, some people might say that they think that they want to eat healthier and maybe work out so that they can become more energized and be able to make it through their day easier, when that's all cool and everything, but they don't actually do anything to turn it into a priority. Like, it's a fun goal, kind of like something you set at the beginning of the year, but you don't actually take action steps towards it. And if you don't take action towards your priority, it's not a priority. It's pretty much just a goal. It's pretty much you saying that it's not important to me. Like, yes, it's something I want to do, but it's not important. If you say I don't have the time for it, it's really you saying that it's not important. It's not a priority. And knowing what your actual priorities are is extremely important so that you know where your time is going. Some people have their priorities mixed up, and we'll get into that later, but some people have their priorities mixed up, and what they're actually putting their time and energy towards is not something they really want to put time and energy towards, but they don't realize it because they've never actually sat down and looked at what their priorities are. Like, they think of it as a goal, but they don't actually, like I said, put action steps towards it. And so I want you to be able to say that you are putting time and energy towards the things that you want and not be a slave to something that's not actually important to you, but you're doing it because maybe the world says it's important, or maybe you think it's important, but in all reality, your priorities are what's important to you, and what's important to you, it doesn't matter what anybody else has to say about it. So, with that being said, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Mamas Partnering with God podcast. I am your host, Molly Bunnell, mom, wife, and Jesus lover, and this is where we tackle life struggles with the help and guidance from God. In this podcast, you will find God-led solutions through partnering with God in your life. My mission is to equip you with the tools that will bring you closer to God, allowing you to find faith, hope, and peace so that you can tackle marriage, motherhood, and finances with ease. It can be so easy to let the world run your life, but what do you get from that? Pain, heartache, struggle? But with God as your solution and creating a God-led lifestyle, hope, joy, and peace are just knocking at your door. So, if you're ready to finally team up with God, doing things in His strength instead of your own, you better turn that Mickey Mouse on for your kids and plug in those headphones, mama, so we can go partner with God. Okay, so like I said earlier, I wanted to talk about priorities today because it is something that a lot of people don't really talk about, and we don't really think about how much impact it has on our lives. Like, we know we have priorities, we know what's important to us, but we don't sit down and think about what it is priorities can do for us and to us. And like, there are so many other topics out there that we think are more important, but if we don't know what our priorities are, then how can we create time management systems? How can we say that we want to spend more time with our children or spend time with God and it actually happen? Like I said earlier, priorities are only so important to you if you actually make it a priority. Otherwise, it's just a goal that you have that's not actually very important to you. So, you can sit down and write a list of priorities and you can say, this is important to me, and this is important to me, and that's important to me. For instance, before I did this live, like the content that I'm talking to today, I did a live on in my Facebook group. And before I sat down to write up what it is that I wanted to talk about, I would write up a script. I didn't write a script. I would write up a list of priorities that I thought were important to me. And I kept hearing people all over the business online world saying that, well, if you say you don't have enough time, it actually means that it's not important to you. So then it made me start thinking about priorities and what's actually important to us and everything that we think is important to us. But is it really? Like, by saying that we want to get in shape but not putting action behind it, that's just a goal that's not important to us. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But in all reality, we think that that should be a priority for us. But some things that we think should be a priority to us really aren't. And so we need to really differentiate the things between what's important to us and what's not important to us. And is this actually a priority, or is it just a goal that we're seeking that maybe we'll instigate later on in our lives when we have more time to put that towards a time slot that we have open? For instance, I thought that making time to work out was important to me when I was working, and in all reality, it wasn't. Yes, I needed to be in shape for my kids, for my family, but I was getting up at 6 o'clock, leaving by 7 to make it to work by 8 in the morning, and then I would get off work at 5:15, go pick up my daughter at daycare, and get home by about 6 o'clock, 6:30, somewhere in there. And that meant I only had so much time. And at this time and season of life, I was so fixated on needing to spend time with my daughter that the priority of working out and getting in shape and eating healthy was not something that was important to me. I needed to focus more on my daughter, and maybe I would have had a healthier life back then, which there'll be later podcasts where I explain that. But it opened my eyes to what priority actually meant. And it's so surprising the things that came out of it when I sat down to write this up about the points that I wanted to say when I did this as a Facebook Live. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I can't just share it there. I have to share it on my podcast as well. So, with that being said, I would like to jump into the content of this podcast, and I hope and pray that you get as much out of it as I did when when I just had my eyes opened up to all the possibility of this. And I know that it's something that God brought into my life, because there ain't no way I would have came up with this on my own. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is what I call a priorities pyramid. I know earlier I told you that if we sat down to write a list, my list would have been all over the place saying, all this stuff is important to me, but I don't have the time for all of it. And so with going off of that, if we were to ask anyone today, any moms that you know, any dads that you know, to make a list of priorities. I'm sure that, like I said, your list would look somewhat similar. There might be a few things that are different, but we would mostly be writing things down that we think are important to make it through life, like staying healthy, eating nutritiously, exercising, family, friends. Sometimes we might think about hobbies as being a priority, but that's like at the lower end of things. And we definitely wouldn't think of self-care as a priority because we think that other people need to be put before ourselves. But you will learn that self-care is a priority, that it's something that God wants us to tackle and to make important throughout our lives, which I'm going a little off topic, but like I was saying, if we were to sit down and write a list, it would probably consist of the same topics. And we care about our family, we care about our home and God and the work that we do, and like I said, all those other things that are important to us. But it's not just enough to have a list. A list has no rhyme or reason. It has no order, no restraints, no meaning. I mean, yeah, you can number it 1 through however many, but that still doesn't tell you the importance that you need to put on each and every topic. Like, it would pretty much be like creating a grocery list. And I know when I sit down to write up my grocery list, it's just one big long list of things that I need to buy. And sometimes I can get a little more organized and put them in categories so that when I go into the store, I can just be in one section, get everything there, and then go to another section and get everything there, rather than running around going, oh, hey, I forgot this, and that's clear across the store. I guess you stay here and get this stuff, and I'll run back and get that. That's a normal monologue that my husband and I go through, if you couldn't tell. But it's still just a list. Like, if I get things out of order, so what? If I forget them, I'll figure out a way to make it work. It's not super important. A list can order things and make it a little more organized, but it's not got importance on it. And you can't just create a list of priorities because, yes, writing things down helps you remember them. But it's just a piece of paper that will eventually find its way to the trash. It holds no power over you and eventually will become non-existent. I mean, for it to hold any weight, you have to write it on your heart. You have to put it into an order that's going to tell you how much time and energy that you should be putting into that one thing. And a list is not going to do that. And a list isn't really going to make it on your heart because it's like a list of to-dos. It's like a grocery list. It's a list of bills you need to pay and places you need to go. It's important to an extent, but not in the long run. So that's why I came up with what I like to call the priorities pyramid, because just like the food pyramid, it's something that you always remember because it's a pyramid and people talk about it all the time. But it's a pyramid, and just like the food pyramid, it tells you how much you should be emphasizing of time and energy and thoughts and everything about you towards that one specific, I don't want to call it a task, but priority, that one specific thing that's important to you. Because if you look at the food pyramid, at the bottom is how much you should be eating, and then you go up with less and less time. Well, for the priorities pyramid, I like to flip it upside down. so that we put the most important at top. So it's still kind of like your list that you have, but it's in a pyramid shape so that you know how much time and energy you should be putting towards each of these priorities. And yeah, it kind of sounds like there is a set list of priorities out there. Well, let me tell you, there is, which I like to be super excited about because it gives you freedom because there's less choice. And trust me, there is such thing as decision fatigue. I've had it. It's made me grumpy. Thank goodness I haven't had to deal with it while being pregnant. Well, I mean, I was kind of at the beginning of my pregnancy with the first real time that I encountered decision fatigue, but I wouldn't say I was far enough along. It was like the first week of possibly being pregnant, so I can't say that that's what made me so not fun to be around. But I digress. So that's what I do with this pyramid is I flip it upside down so that you know how much time and energy you should be focusing on each of these areas. But like I was saying, yes, there is set priorities for us as Christians, as mamas partnering with God, because God has priorities that we should be focusing on. And I'm sure you know them. You've just maybe never thought of them as a priority. But it's super exciting to know that He has a list out there of biblical priorities. The priorities that you have set right now are in the mindset of who you were before. They may be selfish and only focus on you. Now, we know that priorities pretty much allow you to be selfish, but they're much more than that. God tells us what we should be putting the majority of our time and energy on, not to be selfish, but so that we can show up and be the best version of ourselves. Now, doesn't that just sound amazing? He set these priorities in place. So 1, we don't have decision fatigue. 2, we know where our focus, our time, our energies should be placed. And 3, we're free because of it. Like, how amazing is that our God allows us to have freedom, but He still cuts back some of that freedom so that we don't get so overwhelmed that we can't go through with it. I mean, the things that He says are important, you're going to be like, duh, if you're not already going, well, I know what they are. Why are you talking about this? But it's so true. It's so awesome to be able to go over this. So before I dive into what these priorities are, I want to talk about fixed and flexible priorities. So God has a list of priorities that are fixed, things that you have to have. And they are at the top of this priorities pyramid. Well, since we inverted it, it's top. But if it was an actual pyramid going up, it would be at the bottom because it's where you have to have your most time focused, where you should be putting the majority of your energy, of your mind, of your soul, of your body, of your heart, of everything should be in these fixed priorities. So, what are fixed priorities? They're priorities that don't change. They're set in stone, and like I said, I'm sure you know what they are. However, if you are burnt out, you don't have them in the right order. Maybe mentally you do, and it's a dream to have it be that way, but we're not living in the order of these fixed priorities. Like, burnout just makes you so exhausted, and it means that your fixed priorities are not in the location they should be. Like, they should be 1, 2, 3. And if you're burnout, they are probably 8, 9, and 10. Maybe one of them might be clear up at 2. I don't know, but they're not in the right order, whatever order it may be. So, what are these 3 fixed priorities that God has for us? 1, God himself, which is a duh, but if we don't think of it as an actual priority and we don't put action behind it, we are saying that God is not important to us. And I don't know about you, but that is not something I will ever say, because God is important to me. He is what gets me through this. He's the one that flows through me right now as I'm speaking to you, so that the words that you hear are from him. They're not out of my own strength. These words are from God. And I pray, like I said, that they make an impact on you, not because they're my words, but because the Holy Spirit is coming through me to tell you this message. And that's why God is a priority to me. Like, I make sure that God is in my life. He is the first thing that I think of in the morning, so that I can actually get through my day. Does that mean that you have to have like a morning routine where God's the first thing you do? No. But I like to set it up that way, and I found that if I spend time with God in the morning compared to spending time with him at night, I am a much better person. And I don't know if it's a mental thing or whatever it is, but I really enjoy spending time with him in the morning when I'm by myself and I don't have my daughter awake and my husband's on his way to work, and it's just me and him, and I can focus on him and he can pour into me. And that's why God is my first priority. I mean, should be your first priority. Matthew 6:33 tells us, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And that is not the only verse out there. There are so many more verses out there that tell you to seek God first. That is what he is always saying. Seek him first. That's why he's at the top and in the biggest portion of your priorities pyramid. Now, that also doesn't mean that you're going to be sitting there 100% thinking about God focused time all the time. No, it means that throughout your day, you are going to be doing things for him. It means that you'll talk to him every now and again. You'll pray to him here and there about things going on in your life. And it's just where you're giving the majority of your energy. And that doesn't, like I said, it doesn't mean that that's where you're sitting down and 100% focusing on it. Number 2, your husband. Does that make you excited, or does that make you a little nervous that you should be focusing on him second as a priority? I know it excites me. I love spending time with my husband. I am sometimes, and I will admit this, I am extremely clingy. I love my husband around. I'd rather be sitting on the couch talking to him, focused time 100% of the time, as much as we can. It's difficult to do with our schedules and with everything that we have, but I love doing that. And Ephesians 5:33 says the wife must respect her husband, and I respect him. Like, I will follow him to the ends of the earth. Hopefully he doesn't want to do something crazy, because if it's something too crazy, I can't say I'll follow him. But I will still respect him, and respect is so important to have. And he is also where our time should be, because we are focused on our husbands since we married them. Like, our husbands are our second half, our other half, the other part of us. And if we don't allow ourselves to get to know them and to understand who they are, then it's pretty much like having a roommate rather than a husband. And we want that support. We need that love. And if we don't make it important and something that we actually strive to reach, we're not going to get it, which is why sometimes when we have children, it's so hard, because we want to focus on our children, which is the third priority. But sometimes our children and husband priorities get mixed around, because Psalms 127:3 says, children are a heritage from God, offspring, a reward from him. Like, our children are a reward from God. How exciting is that? He knew we would be great mothers. He knew we would be awesome at taking care of them, at loving them, at showing them how to become more godlike, knowing him, getting to see who he is and all the amazing things that he can do for them, turning them into amazing humans that we know that they can become because God is giving them as a reward to us. So it's super exciting. It's sometimes stressful, but it's awesome. So those are the top 3 priorities, which is God, our husband, and our children, which I'm sure you're going, well, duh. I mean, it makes sense, but sometimes we don't have it actually set up that way. Okay, so those are our fixed priorities. So the next thing I want to talk about are flexible priorities. Flexible priorities means that, yes, God has a list of what these should be, but they are in a specific order. So you can put them in an order that is fit for your season of life. And what I mean is what is important to you right now, during this season of life where you are growing and raising amazing children, is going to be totally different for you than it was before your children came. It's going to be totally different for you than it was after your children have gone, and even in different stages of your children's lives, it will change. Different seasons bring different priorities, and these flexible priorities will change order. For instance, maybe I should tell you what they are before I tell you what mine are. Okay, so the flexible priorities that God has for us are home, self-care, bringing in income, and other people in ministry. So home, taking care of your home. You can see this in Proverbs 31, where she watches over the affairs of her household and she does not eat bread of idleness. Self-care, which is actually very important. We can see in John 6:15, Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to the mountain by himself. He went to spend time with God, to take care of himself so that he could pour into others. Bringing in income, again, we can see in Proverbs 31, where she sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night, meaning that she continues to bring in enough income where she can provide for her family. Other people in ministry, we see in Matthew 28:19, therefore go and make disciples of all nations. So it's super, super important for us to tell others about God. Like, that's pretty much what he wants us to do. And so that's why, depending on the season of life you're in, this is the order in which you want to, well, it's not the order. These are the priorities in which you want to tackle, but you have to order them in a way that is fit for you and your family during that season of life. For instance, mine is God, husband, children. Then it's work and ministry, because this is so super important to me. God has put this on my heart to give this message that is so super amazing to you, Mama, so that you can hear more about God. You can learn how to partner with him through me learning how to partner with him and what I have already went through in the steps that I have learned on how to partner with him. And it's super, super exciting for me. So then after work and ministry is home, because I like to have a clean home. I want my home to look nice and fresh, not for other people, and not because I want to make an impression, but because it makes me feel good and it puts my house in a sense of peace rather than stress and overwhelm. Then it's self-care, and then it's other people. So these areas are flexible, like I said, because they don't have to be in a certain order and will most likely change throughout your life as one thing will become more pressing than another. However, we sometimes put these flexible priorities over the fixed ones. And when I say fixed and flexible, it means that the first three never move on the pyramid, which I said earlier, but they are stuck there for good. The flexible priorities are what you can move around, spending more or less time on these issues. And that's why I have my pyramid the way it is, with God being first, husband second, children third. Those are fixed, they can't move. And then I have work and ministry, then the home, then self-care, and then other people. And if you looked at my schedule, if you looked at my planner, you would see that that's the way my priorities are set. And I have created a way to make it possible to achieve all of these priorities that are important to me. I took a course recently that called them fundamental needs rather than priorities. And it was very helpful. I mean, there were other areas that go into each of these priorities in her fundamental needs, and they were awesome. And maybe I'll do a podcast about that to explain a little bit deeper, but it's essentially the same thing, putting what's most important to you, your core needs, what you need in order to thrive so that you're not stressed and worn out. And these are the things that God has us intended to do. And so this is the way I have it created for myself. And I would love, love, love to hear what yours are. So this episode is getting a little long, so I'm probably going to end it here, but it's so important. I hope you understand how important priorities are, to actually make them a priority, and rather than just a goal that we see as something that should be important in our lives, but we don't make the time for it. And so that's one thing that I definitely want to help you with with this podcast and with my Facebook group and everything. So if you have any questions related towards these, or if you have any comments or concerns, definitely jump over to the Facebook group and let's talk. Let's keep this conversation going and see where it takes us, see all the things that we can learn from each other, and make this community a great place to support each other. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next week with another Mamas Partnering with God podcast episode. Hey Mama, before you head out, if this episode has blessed you in any way, would you please go and leave a written review over on Apple Podcasts so that it can reach, bless, and impact many other mamas the way it has you? I also want to personally invite you to come and join me and many other like-minded mamas over in my free Facebook group. I would love to hear your thoughts, answer your questions, and keep this conversation going. Praying God continues to bless you. See you next time.